Corey Sparks.
For Marshall against Johnson Crick. We're going to go with that, I guess.
And Wally Lukaczynski.
Enjoy the fake-tainted national title, you scumbags.
Covering everything from the green and gold to pro, college, and high school sports around South Central Wisconsin. Broadcasting live from the Daily Dodge TV studios. This is the Damn Sports Show on Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam.
The 0-1 pitch. Swings, and there it is! A base hit in the right center. He's done it. 3,000 for Robin.
3-2, 2 outs, 4-4, ninth inning. Gantner, there he goes. The pitch, a swing and a fly ball, right field and deep. Get up, and get out of here. Gone for Swaim, and they've done it again. 12 in a row on a 2-run blast by Swaim to win it. Oh my goodness. Holy cow, do you believe it?
All right, here we go with Ryan Braun. The pitch to him. Swing and a drive. Left center and deep. Get out. Get out of here. Gone for Ryan Braun. And they've got the lead. Wow, what a shot by Braun. It's his 37th of the year.
Braun sends it to left center and deep. Get up. Get out of here, and gone again for Ryan Braun. He just hit another 3-run shot out of here. What a day for Ryan Braun. 3 home runs. He has driven in 7. Puts glove on knee, has a new sign from Blanco. He's ready and delivers. Morgan, a smash up the middle. Base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw, and the Brewers win. The Brewers are moving on a base hit by Niger Morgan. He's being mobbed. Wow, what a scene.
Well, rest in peace to Mr. Baseball. Rest in peace to someone who became synonymous with Brewers baseball, to someone who had his own locker in their locker room, to the comedian, the play-by-play voice, the man who coined the term you just heard up, get out of here, Bob Uecker. We have Wade Bates on hand with us, Wally Lukaczynski, Corey Sparks here, and this is kind of going to be a tribute episode. We'll have a little bit of prep sports coming up here on the Damn Sports Show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV. But we will start with talking about Bob Uecker and the legend that he was. And Wade, you've got some anecdotes about him.
Obviously, yeah. Bob Uecker, I'm a little older than you guys, you know. Bob Uecker, literally, I'm 50 years old. And Bob Uecker, there's two people in why I am doing what I'm doing today. One is a guy named Terry Stake, who is a local broadcaster in Wisconsin Rapids. The other one is Bob Uecker. I think anybody in the state of Wisconsin, especially my age or even older, maybe a little bit younger, you grew up as Bob Uecker being the voice of summer. Not just Brewer baseball, but he was the voice of summer because baseball on the radio with Bob Uecker was one of those things where you just whether you were a sports fan or not, you know, whether it was 82 when they were good, whether it was 84, 85, 86 when they were terrible, you listened to Brewers baseball. You listened because of Bob Uecker, and he was a part of your life. And people always said, when Uecker's gone, what's going to happen? And obviously he's tapered off a little bit over the last few years in his broadcast. But so many great moments in my life have been with Bob Uecker and memories. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. And when the news came out today, and I remember Jason Wilde and Wilde and Tausch was talking, and he said, he goes, I'm looking in the YouTube, and there's something being chatted about. And so somebody posted it on there. Then I quick looked, and then the Brewers released at the same time. The Brewers released, thinking Bob Uecker died, and you're like. I'm not gonna lie, you get choked up. Yeah. It's one of those days where you should, you're extremely sad because he was one of the great man, great person, but also, as you've heard all day long on ESPN Beaver Dam and ESPN Wisconsin, you have to be happy and just appreciate that we got to enjoy what he did here. And I got to know him a little bit over the years covering baseball. I covered the Brewers a lot more, probably almost 20 years ago now. From 96 to 2005, I was probably one year I was at 80 of the 81 home games, and other than that are probably 3/4 of them. And you get just in passing, get to interact with Uecker, just a great guy. I mean, and sad to see him go, and he had the time for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we got to see growing up. I know you were a Cubs fan. I grew up in Pittsburgh, so division rivals. And when they would match up, I remember it being you could count on a half inning, a full inning on every broadcast. They're showing the Brewers press box, and it's like, there's the legend. Yep. There's Bob Uecker. And sometimes they'd patch in so you get to hear Uecker's calls instead. And it's just like he was a staple not only to this great state and community, but he was baseball too. Everybody in baseball is hurting today, and it's just a massive loss. 920-887-9595 if you want to call in and give any of your encounters or just memories, any enjoyment that Bob Uecker brought you for the over 50 years of broadcasting that he served on with the Milwaukee Brewers. I just found something earlier today, and I think I heard a snippet about it, so I wanted to make sure it was true. He had a teammate by the name of Warren Spahn in 1962 for the Milwaukee Braves. Spahn was born in 1921. From playing with somebody who was born in the year 1921, you called a Jackson Churio homer earlier this year, and Churio was born in 2004. So just to kind of be able to grasp the scope of his impact and all the interactions he had, that's super cool.
Warren Spahn to Jackson Churio, and Hall of Famer, one Hall of Famer to probably another Hall of Famer, you hope, right? I remember, though, like I said, 1987, you heard some of those highlights there. Mm-hmm. I know, were you alive in 87, Wally?
Not yet.
No, and you weren't in Wisconsin. That was, like, again, one of the greatest memories of my childhood was that Easter Sunday. Mm-hmm. The Brewers had won 11 in a row. The Texas Rangers are in town, and no TV, and just so everybody was outside because it was like 75, 80 degrees on Easter Sundays. It could snow this year on Easter Sunday. Yeah. When Rob Deere hit the home run, no matter where you were at in the neighborhood in Wisconsin Rapids, you heard people cheer. And then when Dale Swain went yard into the bullpen, it was like chaos. People were like running out from like their backyards and just, high-fiving and, spilling their cocktails that they were having with their family. Get-togethers and such, and it was just one of those magical things. That's one of those days where everybody was there, but they weren't there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
20 years later, like, I was there. It's like, you felt like you were there, and
a million people were in the stadium that day.
Yeah, no, exactly, and so just memories like that is what people have. And the '82 season, Robin Yount's 3,000th hit. I drove with my mom there and back 3 days in a row from Wisconsin Rapids. At that point, it was like a 3.5-hour drive. Didn't miss a minute of school, but went right after school, got out, went, drove, saw the 3,000th, and the call that Bob shows his broadcasting ability there, because Robin Yount hit his 3,000th, his radio. He didn't talk for like 90 seconds.
Just let it breathe.
Just let it breathe. And just so many memories that he had. And except when I covered the team, a little bit of interaction. Sitting down like we are now. Yep. Bob would sit down and have the pregame meal with us every now and then, and he'd just shoot the bull with you and talk to you. And he had respect for everybody in the press box. And I was showing you guys pictures of the Loge. Mm-hmm. Remember County Stadium, probably well before obviously both of your times. Mm-hmm. But the local media would sit right below in like an outside seating area. It was called the Loge. So Bob Uecker is would be like right here where we're at if you're watching on Daily Dodge TV. So it's like 96, 97 or so. I'm sitting here on Loud, Wally, right?
Oh, you and me both, buddy.
Yeah. And so I'm just talking to one of our colleagues, but I'm telling a story. At that time, I'm loud. All of a sudden, I hear, "Hey, kid, shut the hell up!" And then I look up, and Uecker stood up, leaned over, and was screaming at me. And at that point, I didn't know about the cough button story, because he had a cough button, that he would because he would he'd have stories, and Norm Macdonald told the story, the late great comedian. And so I got cough buttoned by Bob Uecker at County Stadium. and so then I'm freaking out, thinking that this was on the air. So I'm like, Bob just cussed me out. And on the Brewers radio network. I'm getting fired. I'm John Greenberg, who was the media relations guy at the time. Mm-hmm. I'm like, John's gonna come and kick me out. I'm getting fired from this great job. I'm not gonna be allowed. And so then I was stewing on it. And then, we get down to the press, downstairs right away. Bob obviously does the post game show, and he's not around. So I was stewing on this for a couple days. So
what did I do?
No, yeah. And then so finally, we got maybe 2 games later. I'm sitting up there and I see Bob come up there. He's in the line to get food. I go, "Mr. Uecker, I'm sorry that I messed. I was too loud for your broadcast." He looks at me, he goes, Don't worry about it, kid. And then he just grabbed his
He forgot about it 5 seconds later.
Exactly, because he does it all the time. But, it was just a good dude. And, he is truly Mr. Baseball, king of pop culture. Where do you guys think, if you say the name Bob Uecker to just somebody on the street, would they, so I'm going to say somebody do you think they know who he was?
Like the average person in,
Yeah.
Mississippi. Do they know, you're saying?
I'm going to say the average 40-year-old and over person.
Anybody that's affiliated with sports, I feel like knows who Bob Uecker is.
Yeah, just because of his span, because he started with the Brewers in the early
71.
70s. Right, yeah. That's a long time.
But he did over 100 Tonight shows. He was a staple of Johnny Carson, the one guy that could break Johnny at any time.
Yeah.
And he was also, a guy, Mr. Belvedere, remember Mr. Belvedere?
Absolutely.
Somehow he managed to shoot a sitcom and still broadcast with the Brewers. How does that work?
Great. Well, you just mentioned Johnny Carson. Is that before your time? Were you able to see those?
No, I saw older years about, and then I've seen a lot of the reruns. One of the over-the-air antenna TV channels reruns old Tonight shows. But I was a Tonight Show guy when I was younger. So in the into the later 80s, you'd see Uecker on live, and he had his shtick that he had, and people loved him. And then he got the Sunday Night Baseball, Monday Night Baseball. Uecker as the color guy for the national TV broadcasts. He was. And then, of course, Major League brought him into a whole new generation.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up because obviously if you're not even a Brewers fan, you are likely a fan of the movie Major League.
Right. So
it's one of the best.
Recognizable by movie fanatics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, and that was filmed right here in Milwaukee too. Another cool little tidbit to add into that. But he elevated that movie to another level. How often have we heard even today where you're watching a baseball game just a bit outside?
They've had, the Brewers have done a nice job. Jason Wilde was talking about he has a bobblehead that has all of Bob Uecker's calls. At one point they had an alarm clock promotion for Bob Uecker in the last 15 years. So it was like an old-fashioned alarm clock that you had to wind. And the saying was, get up, get out of bed.
Get out of bed.
And it was Uecker. And it was like one of those things where everybody wanted to get the Uecker alarm clock.
Oh yeah. Wake up to that every day.
No, and Bob just telling stories, about fishing, and again, he added almost a verb to broadcasters of my generation, and some whenever he knew. Sometimes we get ready for a game where this is going to be a dog of a game. One team's much better, or you get in the middle of it, and you'd always say, "I'm going to have to Uecker this game up, make it interesting." Because you come into a game, how are we going to make this thing compelling to the
storytelling,
to the audience? We have to Uecker it up pretty good, and that kind of became a verb in Wisconsin for broadcasters.
Well, there was about 4 hours earlier today when we were doing all these great promotions and shows for Bob, and you got to hear a common theme with listeners and callers saying that I sometimes rooted for the Brewers to get blown out because you knew Bob Uecker was going to be so funny when it was 11-2 in the fourth inning, and most times you're turning it off. Instead, you're turning it up because you're about to get Bob in his element. That's just incredible.
We actually got an email today. I'm going to try to dig it up. I had this somebody sent an email to our home office here. And it had a Beaver Dam tie. Here's what I'm trying to think of this. Here's what it said. Hello from Florida. With the sad news of Bob Uecker's passing away, is there any way he would like to find the promo of a WBEV, a summertime tradition, Brewer baseball on WBEV? He said, since moving in 2018, we still follow the Brewers, and I miss hearing that piece throughout the baseball season. And now he's gone. He's saying, Chris Boucher in Inglewood, Florida, ex-Beaver Damian, he said.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We still have some of those floating around here as well, some of the Bob Uecker liners and such. And, he'll live on forever.
Yeah, absolutely will.
I just want to check the live chat on Daily Dodge TV as well. You can go on there to watch if you would like. And again, we've got the tribute video if you want to roll it back to the beginning on the VOD version of the live stream. But Ken chimed in saying, going to a Brewers game will never be the same without Bob Uecker. Watching him on the Tonight Show was so good. So many appearances. Johnny just loving his stories about his life in baseball. I just watched a 12-minute clip earlier today where he said the best way to catch a knuckleball is to wait until it stops rolling. Yeah. Just funny, witty things like that I think helped a lot of people who might not even know a ton about the sport. When they first heard about him, he kind of helped them fall in love with it.
Yeah, no, again, he was just, his humor was dry, and everybody could relate to it. Everything he kind of said, you could relate to his humor, and whether you heard the story one time or you heard it 50 times, it was always funny. You know, in the way that he carried himself on the broadcasts, and he was so welcoming. He's had a few broadcast partners over the years, and he was always so welcoming to those guys coming in, and he got them into the fold. And I know a lot of them have talked about they were so nervous coming in working with Bob Uecker, you know. And Bob was just a fun guy, same guy on and off the mic.
I feel like when you listened to his games, you felt like you knew who Bob Uecker was. You felt like you were inside on the joke, and he was everybody's fun uncle.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I also think the respect factor of Bob Uecker that we find out today, he was battling lung cancer since 2023.
2 years.
He was, and that nobody knew. I mean, you'd think somehow that would have leaked that, hey, Bob's sick, you know, and nobody knew that it happened until today. And that's why if you go back to after they got bowed out of the postseason, remember the radio post game, they were talking to guys. Nobody wanted to talk about the game. Everybody was crying, and they wouldn't elaborate why.
Right.
And from what we understand, Bob, that he told everybody after the game that he must have told them. I haven't heard official that where he was at and that he probably wasn't going to be here, you know, for the 2025 season. And everybody was in tears. Nobody wanted to talk about losing, you know, dropping that series to the Mets because it was a heartbreaking series loss.
Yeah,
you'd think that
in its own right,
they'd been crushed, and then for nobody wanting to talk about that, it was all about Uecker.
And you could even hear Jeff Levering in the post-game show afterwards. There was kind of a crackle in his voice. Like, it's always a bummer to see a season end, but that, looking back now, and I just heard it about an hour ago, that just sounded a little different. But to your point, Wade, everybody in his inner circle, whoever he trusted to share that information with, they didn't say a peep. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Well, and you could even tell at the end how much he still loved this game, that he wasn't ready to say goodbye to the booth. Even on that final call, you could tell he didn't want it to end. It was like that final 30 minutes, it was heavy on him too, knowing that that was likely it for him. And it's just never going to be the same. Listening to a Brewers game, going to a Brewers game, you could see his name retired with Brewers that never played. I love what Gabe Neitzel said earlier today, but he said the greatest Brewer never played a game as a Brewer, and I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, you know, he had opportunities to go to the Yankees. He had opportunities to move on and go. He could have been network full time, but he you know, his hometown kid.
That's where he was born.
You know, and he loved Milwaukee. You know, he had a little stint in St. Louis as well, but he was a Milwaukee guy and loved the city, and you know, everybody loved him back. You know, everybody.
100%.
I think for anyone down in the dumps kind of looking back on it, like, this guy lived the life of lives. Like, he did exactly what he wanted to do until the very end. You know, I think of a legend here in Beaver Dam, Bill McCullum. He did exactly what he wanted to do until the very end. And if there's a way he preferred to go out, he did go out on his own terms. He was fighting his own battle. His inner circle knew about that battle, and everybody else found out when they did. But no more than, 3.5 months ago, he was calling the NL Wildcard Series against the Mets. Like, that's what he would have wanted to do. And I think something I'm looking forward, you know, as someone who's only 23, he's been a big part of the last few years of my life as I've discovered him more. I'm looking forward to the next 48 hours hearing more stories like the one you just told. I didn't know you got yelled at by Uecker.
Yeah, you know, it's a young punk kid, probably your age. You know, probably 23 years old. And having Bob screaming at me because he could hear me on the broadcast. We were loud. He was, you know, stuff like that. Now, are you guys young enough to remember the Miller Lite commercials?
I've seen them, but they weren't on while I was growing up.
You know, Bob made, you know, they had a lot of ex-athletes. It was Uecker and probably, you know.
Gordie Howe, I think.
Yeah, but Uecker and John Madden probably were them that really kind of made those things. So if you go back and, you know, do some YouTube searches on Miller Lite commercials and Bob Uecker, you know, that comes back to the old, I must be in the front row. And then, you know, he missed the tag. Like the top row of the bleachers, you know, and they had Uecker seats at American Family Field.
Yeah.
You could buy only on game day, I think it was. And they're the top rows of the bleachers. And, you know, the fact that you mentioned he is maybe the most famous Brewer and most popular Brewer of all time, and he never actually played for the Brewers.
Plus, I mean, talk about quotable. I always think of Yogi Berra first, and then when you think about that, Bob Uecker is right there with them.
Oh, yeah.
Where you got to try to go Google right now. It's not even worth trying to read off 100 of these, but it's just the self-depreciating humor where he let you be in on the joke with him is such a unique trait. People have such a hard time laughing at themselves, and he invited you to do that. And I think it's what endeared him to so many too, is that he didn't take himself too seriously. He didn't look at himself as this like, I'm above everybody. You heard Jason Wilde on KBN just before say that he has adjusted the way he views fans now because of the way Bob Uecker treated him and treated other people, always welcoming and always gives you that time when you wanted to meet him.
Yeah, he always would give time. And I've said so many times when people knew that I covered the Brewers, and even now I had a guy call over on WBEV on the morning show, even last like 6 months, said, "Hey, I know that you kind of you've been involved with the Brewers. We're talking about it." He goes, "Is there any way if I got tickets you could get me into the press box to meet Bob Uecker?" How many people just wanted to shake the man's hand? And they used to do these tours across the state of Wisconsin. They still do like the tailgate tours. Where the Brewers would come, players, and everybody always wanted to know, is Uecker coming this year? Because he didn't go to all of them.
Right.
But everybody wanted to shake his hand. Everybody wanted to meet him. How many people tried to talk their way into the press box?
Oh, I bet.
To meet Bob Uecker and just see the legend, the icon. I think in 1971. That's even older than me. That's older than most of the people around.
Yeah, over 50 years ago now.
Yeah.
Could you imagine doing one job for 50 years?
I can hardly imagine you guys still pay me after 6 months, let alone another 49 and a half.
No, but being 50 years, think about what he's seen. He's seen some good baseball over the last decade, but he saw some, in the early 80s, the Brewers were very competitive and such, and then they had a little downswing. 87 was a great year, and they got really bad in like the late 90s.
Yeah.
And they had that run until like the Prince Fielders and Ricky Weeks came in. But Bob was always there, always making broadcasts entertaining.
Still appointment listening, even if maybe the performance on the field wasn't as good. When we come back, we do want to continue to honor the legend that is Uecker, passing away today at the age of 90. But when we come back, we're going to give you some tidbits of information for the Beaver Dam Boys Hockey team. They're back at home at the Family Center Ice Arena, so we'll do a Beaver Dam prep preview for just a few minutes, kind of a mini segment. And then in the third segment, we will welcome on Hunter Vaughn from ESPN Madison, the main producer for Mr. Irrelevant, which you can listen to on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel. He has some Uecker stories as well. So we'll be honoring the legend that is Uecker all show long here on the Dam Sports Show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV.
ESPN Beaver Dam.
The place Dodge County turns for Milwaukee Brewers baseball, WBEV Beaver Dam.
That was pretty cool. So shout out to Kale Zomer, our content manager, director of content here at 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and 95.3 WBEV, for going and hunting down a liner in a matter of minutes that Bob Uecker had recorded, customized for this station, coming in and out of breaks. Pretty cool stuff. Rest in peace to a legend, Bob Uecker, passing away earlier today at the age of 90. We do want to get you your prep sports fix. It's going to be a shorter one today, not only because of the significance of today now, in lieu of getting the news this morning, but we only have one matchup tonight. No triple header. It's just Beaver Dam Boys Hockey. I shouldn't say it's just Beaver Dam Boys Hockey. It's a team that's been playing phenomenal, and we want to cover the who, what, when, where, why, all the details here. So Beaver Dam Boys Hockey is welcoming Shawno and Bonduel. I am hearing that is quite the pronunciation to get through. I will be calling them the Hawks a lot on the broadcast tonight. You can tune in starting at 6:45 p.m. First face-off will be at 7 o'clock exclusively on Daily Dodge TV. My notes for this: we got an overtime thriller last time. It was a 4-3 victory over WNS Storm. Elliot Garton's taking more and more of an initiative as that freshman forward alongside Mason Poznansky, who is still the bona fide leader. Coach Kraft's squad has made some unreal progress over the turn of the new year in the last few weeks. I can't wait to see what they do against another above 500 team tonight. Shawno Bonduel has had a nice season as well.
Yeah, they have, and it's going to be a tough challenge, but one that Beaver Dam, I think, will be up to. Potentially make it 6 wins in the last 7 games for them after that tough start to the year. And in that stretch, they've been allowing just over 2 goals against in that stretch, and then they've averaged over 4 goals. So it's been on both ends of the ice. They've been playing strong defense. They've been getting unbelievable goaltending, regardless of who it's from. And on top of that, you mentioned it, but that top line led by Mason Poznansky has been unbelievable. He'll be looking to add to his 102 career total points to this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, he hit
insane.
his 100th career point in the first period against the WNS Storm on Tuesday, had his 50th goal as well, and then the last few minutes of regulation and then going into overtime, it was the Elliot Garton show. Poznansky did have a remarkable pass to make it 3-2. And advanced analytics, before we move on, you have attended 3 straight overtime wins.
Yes, that's true. So we'll see. I would like them to get it done in regulation. My heart can't keep doing this nonstop. But we do, I see, have... you know who? Tyler from Watertown on the line. So, Tyler, we want to, first of all, say hello. And what would you like to share today about Bob Uecker?
I will admit, the first time I ever went to American Family Field, which it was Miller Park back in 2001. It was a Dare. I just graduated from Dare.
I was going to say, a lot of people have these cool stories connected to that, too. I take it you were a big fan growing up, listening to Uecker as well?
I didn't know who he was at first, and then my dad told me who he was. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
voice.
who he was at first, but then when we would go to ball games every so often, I got used to him.
Mm-hmm.
He is one person in radio and on the TV that's going to be hard to replace.
Yeah, it's impossible to fill those shoes. I don't think that anybody will ever really step in that role again. But, I mean, Bob Uecker is Milwaukee Brewers baseball, and it's turning a page that none of us wanted to do this early.
That's a tough one.
No, not especially a month before training camp.
Yeah.
Spring training, sorry.
And it's just tough, right? You look at the Dodgers situation, how they've been handling it. Like, they recently lost Vin Scully, Joe Davis stepped in, Jeff Levering's been doing a phenomenal job, as well as the rest of the crew on WTMJ. But those are huge, huge shoes to fill. And to your point, Tyler, you kind of felt like maybe you jumped on the bandwagon a little late. You're like, oh, I don't know who this is yet. Well, that's the beauty of his longevity. He was in it for so long. Even if you got in a little late, you probably got to know Bob Uecker one way or another.
Yeah, especially when AM switched to the FM, and then almost 3 years ago, that's when I got to hear the baseball games.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he's a phenomenal person. He's going to be well missed.
Well said.
And what I think that all the leagues should do is have a moment of silence at every ball game.
Well, I think you're going to definitely see that in Milwaukee. I wouldn't at all be surprised if you see something like a patch or something done this year.
Oh, yeah.
In honor of Uecker, which is obviously the least they can do. And as always, we appreciate the call, Tyler. We appreciate you sharing some stories of Uecker for us today.
Have fun, you two.
All right.
Thanks,
Stay warm.
Tyler.
Thank you very much. And this goes for the entirety of the show. If you would like to call in at any time, 920-887-9595 is the number. 920-887-9595. Your memories, your impression of the legend that is Bob Uecker. Also, a reminder, if you are able, please help those people affected by the California wildfires in 2025. You can still donate at redcross.org/ESPN. That is redcross.org/ESPN to help the Red Cross respond and help people recover. When we come back, more Bob Uecker coverage. We get on the phone with Hunter Vaughn from ESPN Madison, a fellow broadcaster in this industry as well, who will be sharing his perspective of the Brewers play-by-play legend. This is the Dam Sports Show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV.
Hey.
Sports Show as they take you inside Beaver Dam High School athletics. Weekdays at 4 on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam.
This is Bob Uecker inviting you to join us all season long for Milwaukee Brewers baseball on WBEV Beaver Dam.
And we welcome you back to the Dam Sports Show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV. A tribute show, if you will, for the legend that is Bob Uecker. Honored him in the first block. Kind of a mini second block for the lone prep matchup of the night. That is Beaver Dam Boys Hockey against Shawano and Bonduelle, which will be at the Family Center Ice Arena. And we will get coverage going on Daily Dodge TV starting at 6:45 p.m. Contest will start at 7. Now we have Hunter Vaughn on from ESPN Madison. He is a producer and on-air host for ESPN Madison. He's also the main producer for Mr. Irrelevant with Alex Strofe, which you can listen to or watch on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the early afternoon. Hunter, tough day for all of us, obviously. How are you holding up?
It's weird. This hit me harder than I thought it was going to with Uecker passing. Because, obviously, you realize, okay, even a few years ago, he's in his mid-80s. How much longer is he going to do this?
Right.
It's just kind of eventually going to happen. But then all of a sudden, it's just the news comes out this morning, and you're like, oh, it happened. So it's been tough, but, man, he was such just an absolute legend and easily one of the funniest human beings I've ever seen on TV. If you haven't, go back, watch his stuff on Johnny Carson. I mean, he was on there for 100 different episodes. He was just hilarious on that show.
Well, and it's a testament, too, because Johnny Carson, to get him to break was almost impossible. And to even be asked to come back on more than a couple times is just a mark and a testament to how funny someone like Johnny Carson thought he was. And to your point, Hunter, it's must-watch TV. Go out there on YouTube, pull some up. But anything that Bob Uecker was attributed with, Hunter, it seemed like he left you smiling, left you happy, and left you laughing.
Exactly. And do you guys know the story of why he was even doing Carson?
No, I haven't heard why that started at the beginning.
So Uecker was going out to L.A. to film episodes of Mr. Belvedere.
Okay.
And he happened to be on one time. He had met Johnny at something, and then because he was so funny that first time, Johnny was like, anytime that somebody fell through at the last minute, he was just like, just call Bob. And then that's just how that happened. And he just became the fill-in guy on that show if a guest fell through.
Well, I do want to. That's first of all, that's unbelievable. But I was pumped up today that you wanted us to focus this conversation on Bob Uecker just because he is such a legend. He definitely deserves that. And we know it's a heavy day in this state, Hunter, and we are forced to say goodbye. And I mean forced to say goodbye to a legend. But I want to open it up to you. What would you say that Bob Uecker meant to you? What made Bob Uecker, I guess, so appealing not only to this state, but to people at large across the country?
Well, I think what made him so appealing is just the fact that, he was just a guy.
Yeah.
And, he never saw himself as anything more than that. Everyone else around him saw him as something more. I mean, I remember I was an intern for ESPN Milwaukee the summer of that 2018 season. So that was the team that ended up going to the NLCS. And I got to go and cover a couple of games. And the first game I did, they were playing the Dodgers. And we got there early enough where you could come in where the press entry is at AmFam Field, for those that don't know. It's basically kind of down, almost down underground a little bit, but over towards right field. And Uecker would come in with his Corvette, and he would just pull right into the garage, and then he could park inside every time. And he comes in as we're getting there, and basically I walked with Uecker up to the press box, was terrified to say a word. I'm I can't. I walked a couple of steps behind him, but it just felt okay, I got to be in Uecker's presence for a couple of minutes. And that was just the type of aura that he had. And it's so funny because, all of the play-by-play stuff that's been played today of him, and everybody talks about just how great you could go to the nuts and bolts of play-by-play, and that's something that I would dream of being able to do at a level that Uecker could do it at. But it's even just the fact that every single person felt connected to the guy. That's what sticks with me and was his biggest impact, is that it did not matter if you're a broadcaster, a even surface level sports fan. If you were a Brewers fan, you felt like you had a connection to Bob Uecker, and that is just such a powerful thing and shows how incredible he was as just a play-by-play voice to get people to feel a connection, even if you maybe heard him speak 4 times a summer. You just felt connected to the guy.
Well, Hunter, let's jump back to that part. As you are someone who's in sports broadcasting like us, and you have a huge passion for play-by-play, what did Uecker teach you on that front? Was it the personability? Was it the fact that he had these quirky, funny little phrases? What stuck out to you, and is there anything you model yourself after?
You know, when I first kind of decided, for people that don't know my story, I can kind of use this time for it too. I originally went to school because I thought I wanted to be a history teacher.
Okay.
Did not pan out for me. Took a year off and then kind of was like, you know what, maybe radio's something. You know, my dad was telling me I have a good voice for it. And then I had a mentor as I started working at a radio station up in Berlin. And he was like, yeah, if you want to go into sports and maybe play-by-play something you want to do, he would start sending me old broadcasters to listen to. So guys like Eddie Doucette, who's the first voice of the Milwaukee Bucks, he would send me, you know, Pat Hughes stuff, and he would tell me, hey, listen to this guy. He used to work for the Brewers. And then he finally started sending me old Bob Uecker videos to go back and listen to. And it was just everything about Uecker was just perfect. And the thing is, he'd make fun of himself and act like it wasn't good, but it was. And then those big moments, the biggest thing is especially the Robin Yount 3,000th hit call. He doesn't talk for close to 20 seconds because he just let County Stadium and the fans have that moment and bring that into the radio. And I think that's such a big thing. Like, it's so easy for me. You know, I've gotten lucky to have a quadruple overtime state semifinal basketball game last year. I had a walk-off field goal for a high school football game. Like, I've had these fun final second moments, and it's so easy to just talk over it and just keep going. But to let the crowd make the moment was what Uecker honestly was the best at.
Well, and knowing that even in that moment to let it breathe, because to your point, we've all 3 of us here have called these games. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment and let it spiral away from you, and you're just
with the crowd.
Yeah, and you're rambling. Yeah, that gift, and it really was a gift that you get to see these true storytellers like Bob Uecker, like Vin Scully, like all these guys that are just baseball. They just it's a lost art, and it's not happening as much anymore. I love that point, Hunter.
Yeah, and it's, you know, especially the fact that he was the voice of the Brewers, and, you know, I've seen some people talk about he was the soul of the Milwaukee Brewers too.
Yeah.
You know, I just think about how much of a connection I feel like this team, even more so to a level, I think, than the Packers do in the state, just have a connection for people because they weren't there there wasn't baseball in Wisconsin for such a long time. And then for it to finally come back, you had this generation in the 70s then just latch on to the Brewers. And then that's carried through for the generations where I think that's a level of appreciation that so many people in this state have that you don't necessarily get from the Packers. So then to have the soul of the team finally go, like, it just hits you so much harder than I think, you know, anything else. Like whenever Wayne Larrabee eventually hangs it up for the Packers, like that'll be a sad day for Packer fans. But it's not going to be the same thing here that's happened with Bob.
Well, I think you make a great point, Hunter, because Wade was on with us in the first segment talking about how the dog days of being a Brewers fan in the 90s and even the early 2000s before, you know, Braun and Fielder and Weeks came around. And there was a gap there between that 87 season and 2000s where if you didn't have one of, if not the best broadcaster of all time at the helm, maybe there wasn't a whole lot of investment and reason to listen to and consume content for this team and tune into a Brewers game. We've lost a lot of legends in the last handful of years, Hunter, but from your point of view as a Brewers fan, as someone who's grown up watching, listening to this team, why does this one feel a little bit different?
Well, and I'm going to get a little choked up with this. So for me, back when I was in high school, I would go to my grandma's and just hang out with her, watch the game. We'd have Bob on and turn the TV. We'd mute the TV. And that's just connections that you, like, everyone has. And it's really, like, you feel like you lose that. But then, thinking about it today, like, I'm remembering all of that.
That's powerful.
Oh,
we appreciate you sharing that, man.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, you're killing me, man.
No, but that's just it, right? Like, we fall in love with the sport. That there are people who enjoy the game of baseball, but then you have certain storytellers like that, and it was, to your point, Hunter, right? It was appointment listening. I'm gonna go. Yep. I'm gonna go hang out with Grandma, and we're gonna have Uecker on. We don't care who's calling the TV broadcast today. We know the classic voice that's been around calling Milwaukee baseball since 1971, who's got those wisecracking jokes, and we know he's gonna bring it every time, regardless of if it's a 5-4 walk-off or if you're lucky, it's an 11-2 blowout in the fourth, and he starts telling stories, right?
Yeah, and, like, think about that, too, just from a, Wisconsin sports fan. The fact that Bob Uecker, even at that time then, when I was doing that, he was in his late 70s, going into his 80s, he would have been. And they had Brian Anderson, the guy that's now doing Eastern Conference Finals. People keep talking about, like, oh, when is he just going to finally kind of leave the Brewers and, like, go get a big network job? And nope, didn't care. Didn't want to listen to him. And he's great. He's awesome. He's incredible. Does an awesome job with what he does. But it just wasn't Bob. And that's like the best part about this. And, I've seen some people, too, talk about, like, oh, it would have been so nice for him to get, like, that send-off broadcast where everybody knows, like, okay, this is the last one. This is it. And, like, I never got to talk to him. But I feel like even though that loss to the Mets was his last broadcast, he would have rather just had it have been his last and not have a broadcast have to be about him. Like, that's just never the vibe I got from him. He would have, like, granted, he would have wanted his last to be a Brewers World Series.
Right.
But if it wasn't going to be that, just whatever broadcast it was, that's his last one. Don't make a big deal out of it, and then just move on.
Well,
so I think things ended the way he wanted them to.
I'd like to think that as well, right? As someone who's in love with the sport so much, why would you ever want to admit and have everyone else tell you, this is it, right? And that's why I think he never, to your point, retired. He never retired. He was going to do it until he couldn't anymore. I do want to, as we have you for a few more minutes here, Hunter, just talk about the fact that, point to the decline at any point in his calls. He was sharp as a tack all the way into the NL Wildcard Series. That's the craziest part, is so many people who were even discovering him for the first time the last couple of years are going, this guy's in his late 80s, and he knew everything. He didn't seem like he was ever on a decline. He soaked up information. He was talking to the players every day. He had his own locker, and even at the ripe age of 90 years old, there's an argument he was still the current day best broadcaster in baseball. I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and especially, like, hearing now, we literally just found out today with his passing that he was dealing with lung cancer. Like, that stuff's not, like, that's not a joke.
No.
I mean, no cancer is, but, like, that's hard to deal with. And he was dealing with that while still then coming to the ballpark and still doing the game. Like, it just shows how incredibly strong he was of a person, too, to be able to go through that, do that, and then that never leaked out. Nobody else knew about it. From the way that I understand it, it was really only the people closest to him up in that broadcast booth that knew, and they all kept it under wraps. And, like, that's just such an impressive thing for him to be able to go through all of that and just be like, you know what, again, I'm going to just make this about the baseball and make this about the team.
Well, thank you, first of all, for sharing that, Hunter, with us. And because it's poignant, it kind of got me choked up, too, just because you think about it. And I think the reason why these ones hit so hard is because you do have these memories connected with your family, with, like, the brightest times of your life, with your loved ones. And today, it feels like you lose a little bit of that childhood, a little bit of those memories, and we'll have them forever. We'll obviously always love and always remember Uke, but I think it's just like he is the voice of so many memories that go even beyond what's happening on that diamond out there. So just wanted to tell you thank you so much for sharing that. You got me out here bawling during the interview, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys, and I'm sorry that I did that. It's just...
Don't be sorry.
No, I'm happy you did it, man.
Well, and it's just one of those things where I honestly, like, the reason I wanted to get into sports broadcasting is this type of a connection that these teams can have with people. And Uecker did it, and it was incredible.
It was phenomenal. I mean, what a life and what a way to live your life, to build those deep connections with people for 53, 54 years over the air. He was probably a big comedian in the clubhouse even as a player, too. So, baseball through and through. Hunter, as always, we appreciate you coming on. I know kind of a somber topic today, but glad you can jump on and kind of share your perspective about everything today.
Of course, anytime, and next week will be much more positive and upbeat.
There we go.
Amen, man. You're the best, Hunter.
Do our best.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Hunter Vaughn from ESPN Madison, on-air host, content creator, producer, you name it, he's done it. Does a lot of play-by-play for them, too, and someone who I'm sure there's a lot of people in Good Karma Brands and in radio in general right now who are where they are at right now because of legends like Bob Uecker. When we come back, we go over what is called Out of Bounds, things that set us off throughout the week. We're going to try and end this on a lighthearted note, and then catch us in a couple of hours for some Beaver Dam Boys hockey against Shawano and Bon Duell. Nailed it. Right here on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV.
teams on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam.
A summertime tradition, the Brewers on WBEV Beaver Dam.
The classic voice of Bob Uecker. Ueck, a legend, passed away this morning at 90 years old, but his memories, it's a cliche, but very true in this point, will live on forever. We've got some of his liners, and we're playing them, so he will definitely be living on forever in and throughout this station. And if there is not anything more guaranteed than a short fourth segment, you do not know this show very well. This is Out of Bounds, and it's going to go for about a minute. Basically, what has set you off this week? We're going to end it on, I said a lighter note, but I guess this is still relatively negative. That's okay.
No, go with yours, please. I'm going to save mine for next week because I'm going to ramble about it.
Yeah,
so please go ahead.
This does seem like a Wally rant. Well, mine is, unfortunately, we just had Hunter on. Mine's the Dallas Cowboys for the way they handled this Mike McCarthy situation. Negotiation period went a little too long. They got through the bye week. And now because of that, they can't talk to Ben Johnson. They can't talk to Aaron Glenn. They can't talk to these hot ticket names because Mike McCarthy was technically still the coach, which you're like, okay, stick to your guns. That's fine. Well, no. They ended up letting him go anyway. So now they're blocked from a lot of candidates because they waited so long and we're in the divisional round now. They were blocking other teams, the Bears, from taking and talking to McCarthy, and then it didn't work out anyway. Just a weird situation. I know Hunter's displeased with it too, because on Mr. Irrelevant, he said, I think this whole entire debacle from the last week and a half with blocking people from talking to McCarthy and then letting him go is a disaster. And I think it is a disaster.
Completely bungled the situation, and it's so fitting of Dallas and Jerry. So, you know what? I can't blame you there. At least maybe you guys keep them out of the division then?
Yeah, I don't know. We shall see. We shall see. But they kind of limited their own options. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
We'll see you tonight. Beaver Dam Boys Hockey on Daily Dodge TV. Coverage starts at 6:45 p.m., and then we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Homer Hour is coming up next on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam.
This Sports Center